This will be a fun conversation because you've been around almost as long as I've been around. You're the longest living AE I know.
Oh no.
Long live the you guys.
What's up, James? All right. I am going to start this right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get started a little bit earlier than usual. Usually I'll give people about 3 or 4 minutes to get on. And I will be trying to at least keep this to about 40 minutes at the most. My son has a Olympic development team is planning a tournament early
Awesome.
this afternoon in soccer, and I want to get out to the facility to make sure I don't miss too much of it. Um, but hey, I wanted to welcome Nathan Gregory to the call. Nathan is one of our longest living AEs. He's one of the, I think you might have been in the top 10 conversations I had when I first joined AE, or when I first joined Acquira. So you've been around for quite a while, sir.
I'll take that as a compliment.
That
However you
is
mean it, I'll just take that as a compliment.
it's a testament to your persistence.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's
why don't
safe
we
persistence.
yeah, exactly. Why don't we just jump in with what how did you come to join Acquira? What brought you to Acquira to begin with?
Sure. So when maybe this goes to what you said, the long running time, there was a different name for Acquira. I'm blanking on it initially. Um, and so it goes all the way back to that when I first came across you guys, and it was really when I came across the idea of buying a business as a path to entrepreneurship. You know, I don't know how deep you want to go into background or not, Rich, but just the very short story is that, in about maybe 2019 was when I really started looking at it seriously, and came across Acquire. Really liked the idea of the peer
Seven
network, the
seven three
education,
six one six.
all that it is. And I think we joined, it was probably in 2020. It might have been 2021. I can't remember.
It was
Um,
2021.
yeah, 2021.
Yep.
And I say we because I have a partner, Paul,
Yep.
who's overseas at the moment. But anyways, that's about how long as it's been.
Yeah.
Went through several journeys to get to this point, but yeah.
All right, cool. And what were you doing before you joined up with Acquira?
So I've done a bunch of different things, but primarily my career has been in the music business and the representation of entertainment talent,
Mm,
um, and which is a pretty different, unique path into this. And what led me in this direction was I was acquiring real estate, building a real estate portfolio. I'm based in Southern California, and so we were doing that here, and really kind of just came across this concept of the way that we're buying an apartment building and increasing the value of it. You know, apparently you can do the same thing with a company. And I know that just is just laughably obvious to anyone who has any kind of finance or certainly private equity background, but for me it was a new observation. And
uh,
so I went and said, this is my path. This is what I have to do. And because that model, at least in the way I was approaching it, would require a good amount of debt, I said, well, I'm not going to buy anything in the entertainment industry where it's very volatile, it's up and down. So I need to look in a really durable, essential part of the economy, which of course led to this initial path towards home services, which obviously Acquire has a strong base in. But alongside being in the entertainment industry, I built and sold an e-commerce company from 2018 to 22 or 21, so over the span of 3 years. My partner and I also bought a small media company in late 2020,
uh,
which really kind of gave us some of the expertise that we needed to do what we ultimately acquired last year. So it was a bit of a mixed bag, but I had a standard job at a
yeah.
big talent agency in the entertainment industry, and so that was the core part of what I was doing, and everything else was kind of on the side and on the periphery.
Okay. All right. And how'd you and Paul meet, by the way?
So Paul's also comes from the music entertainment industry.
Okay.
Um, and we were acquaintances, we were friends. He was building a real estate portfolio. I was starting to, so we came together to do that, and that's where we sort of started our partnership.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So now fast forward to you guys actually joining Acquira. Kind of when you guys came in, what was what types of businesses were you guys trying to go after initially?
It was the straight up the line, the HVAC, the plumbing, really primarily that. That was where we started. And that was our initial mission. We definitely got cold feet during COVID, which is when we went and bought a smaller online media company, and then came back to it in, I guess it was 2021, and
Uh-huh.
said, "This is the direction we're going." Because we really, once COVID happened, we were a little nervous about taking on that debt. In hindsight, it would have been great with some of the just the way the economy went coming through that, but um, hindsight's 2020. But
Yeah.
at the time, we were nervous about that approach. Anyways,
So now I just kind of I think I remember this. You I seem to remember you guys bringing a string of auto shop repairs, a portfolio
we
of
did.
auto
So,
shop repairs. I was just wondering,
so
I was like, was that you guys? I think I
it
remember.
was, yeah. So like anyone else here, probably, you have
Yeah,
sort of what you're looking for, and you come across other interesting opportunities, and
yeah,
and it was, I guess it would have been. So this is now 24. That was 23. It would have been summer of 2022. We came across a small portfolio. It was not really a portfolio because some of them they
yeah,
were all owned by different
yeah,
owners,
yeah. I
but it
remember
was
that.
it would have been a kind of a portfolio transaction of auto repair shops, and we got pretty deep into that, very
Yeah,
deep. And there was no broker in that. It was a franchise business. It was brought to us by well, it wasn't brought to us, but we engaged with the franchise who was leading the search to find a buyer. And ultimately we didn't do that because the numbers weren't really presented that well, and we could touch on this, Rich, but to me it really showed the benefit of a good broker in a transaction where we were dealing with the owners who had really kind of unfortunately fundamental misunderstandings about how to value their business based on their numbers.
yeah,
And so in the end of the day, we just had to walk away from that because it didn't make sense. Because also we were looking for a transaction big enough because we needed to kind of be our initial platform so that we can grow on. And it turned out that it wouldn't have been big enough. Not nothing against. I think it still would have been a great opportunity if
yeah,
we had the platform in place. But it wasn't right for us at the time.
yeah. What? So going through this process was the search process particularly like
Yeah,
was it frustrating for you guys, or was it kind of
definitely frustrating. But at the same time, you really get to see the country and the different elements that make
yeah,
up the economy, and there's really nothing. I'm a very curious person, so I love getting a packet on a business and looking through it, and you just learn of all these different businesses that you just never even realized existed, and how much opportunity is out there, and how
yeah,
many unique businesses there are. And I love that. But yeah, it definitely required a relentless persistence in adaptation over time. When we started our search process, SBA interest rates were about 5.5%, to when we closed on a transaction, they were 11%, and they're even a little higher now. And so, there was different things we had to adapt to as as things changed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, well now let's get into since we're at that point now, and you kind of alluded to the past around interest rates. Let's talk about your current business. What type of business is it, and how'd you guys find it?
So at the end of 22, I basically just kind of hit the pause button. I said, I feel like we're not getting traction, and the main thing was, and I think this is important because it's just about where you are, and I think it's about being really true to yourself and what you bring to the table and what your expertise is and what you're able to handle. We were full on the path of we're buying a home services business. We were working with Rich. We're underwriting bigger businesses. When I say bigger, like 4 or 5 million, $6 million businesses. And we just, the licensing issue kept coming up.
Hmm.
And my my point of view is if you have a really strong will, there's a way to get a deal done. If you're not going to hold the license and you're not capable of holding the license, you can, but to get to that point is not guaranteed, and it's a big hurdle.
Yeah.
And we felt like it was, and it's different in different states. In California, that was the hurdle we had to deal with. And so I kind of stopped and said, look, we know we like this industry for these reasons, but at the same time, we don't really bring a lot to the table in terms of our experience other than just owning properties and hiring a lot of service companies.
Yep.
Um, and that's not the same. And so we thought, we have a lot of background in content media. And also we thought about the four, I think I just became a bit more aware of the four types of leverage where you have capital, people, media, and
Mm.
code. And I thought, what are we trying to achieve here? If we buy a business with debt, we're getting capital leverage. Obviously, you have a team, you have people leverage. Where do we don't have code experience. We're not going to try that. But we do have media experience. So why don't we look for a media business? But if we are going to put debt on it, it has to be a trade media business or something that's very durable, something that's part of an essential part of the economy, something that's been around for a long time. And when I say trade media, it's like if you're in any kind of industry, there's usually like trade publication magazines people get. Obviously, a lot of that is shifted to digital, but there's still a pretty thriving print business in addition to a thriving digital business. So that was one of several different avenues we were looking for. And in March or April of last year of 2023, we came across a trade business in the automotive collision repair industry called Auto Body News.
Hmm.
And it's a 42-year-old business. The owners were two partners. One was basically medically retired, who had had some medical issues a year before. The remaining partner, she was doing her best to kind of to hang on, but she was really ready to retire. And the really unique thing was they had acquired the business 16 years before them, before
Okay.
and they were the fourth owners. So we would be the
Oh,
fifth.
wow.
We would be the fifth owners of this business. So we felt like this is a brand that has proven to be transferable because
Uh-huh.
we would be the fifth owners of this company. And just like anything else, we run through all the due diligence. It fit, so it was a media business that, so there's monthly magazines that go to 35,000 collision repair shops across the country. There's a thriving website, a podcast, all this different stuff. And so the media aspect was there, and the size of the deal was right in line with what we were looking for. It was, upper six figures and a version of seller discretionary earnings. It
Hmm.
was, very reasonable multiple. It was kind of being marketed like a local business, but if you're familiar with anything in that kind of industry, usually the acquirers are not local
Yeah.
acquirers, they're PE shops, and so it didn't seem like it had hit the radar of those kind of acquirers. The other thing was, without knowing it, they had built a business. When I say without knowing it, is they didn't market it this way. They had built a business with incredible recurring revenue, which is not usually the case with advertising businesses. It's
Yeah.
up and down selling advertisers,
Is it
but
based on like the subscriptions or is it based?
the subscriptions are free. So
Okay.
there wasn't that, but there's about, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of advertisers. And
Ah.
and most of them have been with the advertisers for 5, 6, 10 plus years, and so they pay every month, and they're happy to be part of it. So it just met a lot of our criteria, and also it had an office that was sort of local to us in Southern California. We're in
Okay.
LA, it was close to San Diego, and so about a 2 hour drive in a beautiful seaside town where my brother lives. So there was a lot of things that just felt very right.
It was
Um,
like Goldilocks for you guys.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't without its tear for
Yeah.
sure, but we put a deal together, and we closed. So it really was about April to August was when we closed. And I will say there was really nothing that held up the process. It just took that long,
Hmm.
and which was about a month and a half longer than I thought it would take. But that's how long it took. Um, so
This was a brokered opportunity.
it was a brokered
Okay,
opportunity.
was a broker pretty easy to deal with?
He was amazing. In fact, I don't think I think it would have been just difficult to get the deal done without him involved. You know,
Okay,
he was truly, not only did he package it really well, but you know, you have an owner where it's their
yeah,
baby, they get emotional. He was
yeah,
able to navigate those kind of things really, really expertly. And so he was fantastic.
nice,
Yeah.
nice. How'd you guys ultimately end up financing the business? Like,
I,
kind of what was the structure around that?
it was It was an SBA deal
Okay.
plus a seller note. We did not max out the SBA. It was part of, you know, interest rates are higher. And
Uh-huh.
also we said, you know, we don't, if we can get away with it, we don't want to max out the leverage. And so it was close to, you know, close to what those, you know, minimum amount down bit deals are, but it wasn't all the way there. Um, the other unique aspect is we got a really good lesson in working capital calculations in this process.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that always seems to be like an
yeah,
issue with people. And it's always different per deal. But yeah,
yeah.
it's the more you look at these things, the more you realize there's a whole swath of ways to calculate it. So tell us about your experience with it.
So the short version is our lender gave us a fantastic, I'll call him sort of a quality of earnings type guy, um, who who was a really great part of our team in
Hmm.
closing the deal. And as part of that, he put together his version, which was a very rainy sky, dark cloud version of the working capital needed at close. And you know, it was more than I think we expected. And this was post LOI. And so we had already negotiated a small part of working capital to be left in the deal. We basically went back and said we needed a whole lot more, which went over really, you know, not very nicely with the seller. And we said, look, we need to make sure this business is stable when we
Uh,
take over. And so what we were able to negotiate was a second seller note that was tied to, you know, so when the business closed, there would be accounts receivable that would go to the former owner.
yeah,
And by taking a portion of that accounts receivable and effectively we borrowed it from
yeah,
the seller. And so we had a second seller note with a different set of terms. The senior lender was okay with that. It all worked under the global sort of debt service coverage ratio calculation. And so that's what we ended up putting together. So um, and fortunately it had proved the rainy cloud version
hmm,
ultimately didn't prove to be needed that much. So we might actually pay off a portion of that quicker just because it's a 3-year term. So it's really kind of aggressive in the amortization. But anyways, it turned out to be a SBA note, two seller notes, our equity. There was no equity investors. It was our capital for that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
I when I'm looking at a lot of these deals, by the way, so all you guys understand too. I don't when I'm looking to try to calculate an estimated working capital number. I don't necessarily use the textbook definition of calculating working capital because realistically, with a lot of these small businesses, you don't even know if their financials are accurate enough to get to use those balance sheet calculations and
yeah,
what have you. So I typically will look at, and I'll probably like your guy did, I'm going to look at kind of what the payment cycle looks like in terms of how long cash is outstanding. But I'm also going to look at if I bought this business from day one and I didn't have any revenue coming in for the next 3 months, what expenses would I need to pay? And how would I pay those? And I will use that just like your guy did, that worst case calculation to start my negotiation from. So I get why he did that. It makes a lot of sense. And so I actually may ask you for that QOE guy's number because I just like his approach to doing that.
yeah,
And
we'd be happy to recommend him for anyone. It was very thorough. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't he didn't call it a quality of earnings. He was kind of a due diligence advisor in some ways
yeah,
where but he was very reasonably priced, much less than others who are out there that are just doing Q of E for small business acquisitions. But it was worth its weight in gold for sure.
For sure. Did you find any unusual things during due diligence at all?
Um, not too much. Um, there was unusual things we found out kind of after we closed,
Uh-huh.
but um, but nothing terribly unusual and due. It kind of, Rich. It was a real testament to, we've looked at, prior to sort of reframing our search in 23,
Hmm.
we had probably looked at well over 100 deals, or a little bit over 100 deals. And then in 23, I just counted right before we got on this call, was around 50 deals that we looked at in that first quarter.
Yeah.
And um, it kind of was like, okay, this is what it like, because you're always like, how do I know when
Mhm.
you found the deal that you should do? And this was not our first offer, not our first LOI even. Um, and that, I think that's what kind of hit me, was like, okay, things are checking out. This is, it's not perfect, but
Yeah.
this is how you know, because more things are checking out than not. And so there
What'd
really wasn't anything that was way off or a big surprise.
what'd you find after you closed? That was
I
unusual.
think there was a couple of things, and none of them make for a great story.
Uh,
But given how we've always worked, we're working kind of remotely all the time. Maybe I'm on the road, maybe I'm this and that. I'm pretty technologically savvy. This company, half the people worked, more than half the people worked remotely, mostly as a result of COVID. So we thought that's great. They're sort of already used to that. When we got there, we realized that the business was unbelievably old school. They had a physical server on site in the office.
yeah.
Um, that none of the software or anything was in the cloud. The outsourced IT company was, this was their honeypot. They realized they had people who didn't know what they're doing. So we were able to put a stop to that pretty quick, because everyone's like, I don't know how to open this thing, and I'm going to call the IT company, and you get a $200 bill, for that file. And so there was those kind of things.
Yeah.
Also, the business has as an accounting and HR manager who runs, as you would think, the accounting and HR. And then we later found out that the seller was handling all of basically the accounts payable. She was handling all of that, a
Uh,
lot of the QuickBooks, and it wasn't that nothing was off in terms, all the numbers were very clean, but
yeah.
it was, you know she wasn't as hands off as maybe we thought she was.
Yeah.
Uh, but we were able to absorb all that into the existing team, so it worked out, and we've moved things to the cloud. But there was just little nuances like that where we realized, oh, this could operate remotely if we wanted to get rid of an office and everyone, but not even close. We still have a long ways to go as it relates to that kind of stuff, but we've got the process started.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll always find those little improvements that you can
Yeah.
Oh, for
implement.
sure.
Uh, yeah. Okay, go ahead, James.
So it's related to because you mentioned debt service coverage. So what did your debt service coverage end up being like at close? And then how has that kind of fared for you since, right? Did you do the same down, up? Have you started to go back up? Did it go down immediately, as everybody says? Uh, how'd that play out for you guys, from start to where you're at?
So part of being able to answer that is to have really good operating financial statements, which we have a 4 out of 10 right now with our operating statements. I mean that's a pretty simple thing to look at.
Mhm.
It's proven to be a little better than forecast. I'm trying to look up where where we were. I want to see. So it ended up being probably about. I was trying to get 2 times. That's what I was shooting for. Obviously SBA will underwrite for lower than 2 times,
Mhm.
but it ended up being probably about 1.8,
Mhm.
1.85. Um, that's where it ended up. But also we've added certain expense. We're kind of operating the business differently than the way the
Yep.
seller ran it. Also, there proved to be a little more revenue and a little less expenses than our forecast. So net it's been pretty good.
Awesome.
What quick question about your operations. How do you guys actually source content? Do you guys do it in-house or are there like outside writers that you guys use for
Both.
that
So
content?
we have an in-house editor, and we have
Okay.
like a secondary editor. The editors that they also do writing, and then we have a team of like industry expert contributors who are outsourced people that write for the industry, who write for us. We have a podcast host. Frankly, we're gonna ramp all that up significantly. The for us, this is where having some expertise, we have no expertise in the collision repair industry, but
Yep.
we know about media and the kind of media we've come from, the audience has been our customers. So you have to deliver great content to the audience because they're the ones who put food on your table. And in this kind of industry, your customer is the advertisers. And
Hmm.
so oftentimes the approach, especially with print, was let's print just as much content as we can to fill the magazine so we can sell pages to advertisers. And so we're trying to take this approach of audience first and over deliver for the audience. And it's necessary because the one violation of the good search funder, kind of a rule is that this is not a fragmented industry. There's a small handful. I mean, there's all kinds of
Yeah.
trade media businesses, but in the collision repair industry, there's like a very small handful. We're one
Hmm.
of the strongest, but we're not the best funded. But so we're trying to take a different approach and not this sort of like let's just fill it with whatever content we can so we can sell advertisers. We're going to take a really audience first approach to that.
That's smart. Very smart. So, okay, now you've got bought this business. What has it been like since you purchased the business? I mean, what's changed in your life since then? Um, kind of like,
Um, Look, it's been a up and down kind of ride for sure. What we worked out was we live about 2 hours away from where this office is. And
uh,
so my partner goes down to this office Tuesday and Wednesday, and I go down Wednesday and Thursday, and we stay at a hotel that's 3 minutes down the street. And
mm,
only we have a relatively small team. It's 10 employees. But it's pretty good revenue for the number of employees, but and it works really well. But the most of the employees come in to 1 or 2 or at most 3 days a week. There's only like two that come in every day, and
okay,
so that worked out really well. Um, I think it's been a real lesson for me in the types of caliber of people I've experienced working with some really high caliber people, and it's a bit of a different experience in a smaller business like this. And so helping to um, bring people, helping to train people, bring people towards a new thing, which becomes very important to set a good vision and
hmm,
to develop a culture that wants to attract excellence and great performance, which will also help us as we need to bring in more people over time. And so that's been a real lesson. One thing that I've loved is just being able to set, here's where we're going, here's the plan, here's goals, objectives. They've never had anything like that. And
yeah,
so some people really love that. Some people are kind of shrug at that. But by and large, it's that approach has been really embraced by the team.
yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's very, very cool. So, what is your like typically on a day-to-day basis? What do you and Paul, and I mean, what does a day look like for you and Paul
Yeah,
when you guys come in?
one thing that was important to us was to not be operation as much as possible to not be truly operationally involved.
Uh-huh.
And meaning that the seller, she ran the company, but she also was one of the three salespeople selling advertising.
Okay.
So for us, in my prior life, I did a lot of big brand deals for celebrities. You see celebrities on TV commercials. That's the kinds of stuff I was doing. So I know how to work with brands and
Yep.
marketers and ad agencies and that whole process. So I knew if worse comes to worse, I can deal with these advertisers and make these deals. But we didn't want to do that out of principle for what we're trying to build. And so immediately we went to hire a salesperson that would replace what she was doing, which gave us a bit of apprehension because you don't know how much it's relationship driven with
Hmm.
the owner of the business
Yeah.
versus a brand new person that's hired. So we wanted to have someone with enough, sales experience, behind them to really add that level of seniority. So it was a good investment for us to do, but that's turned out to work really well. We've been involved in some of those transitionary conversations directly with advertisers, but by and large, our approach is how do we help give our team the tools. So what we're spending our time on is how do we make sure everyone has the plan of where we're going, all the tools that they need, all the support that they need. Um, as we come up with issues, we're filling in cracks. And so that's really where we try to spend most of our time. Occasionally, we have to get operationally involved in something, meaning like dealing with an advertiser directly or dealing with a editorial contributor directly
Uh-huh.
or doing some kind of administrative thing directly. But as much as we can, we're trying to not do that so that we can build kind of the value, transferable value that we want to build in this company.
Nice. So let me ask you this one last question, and then I'll let everyone else kind of chime in here for a couple minutes. What are your future plans regarding, when it comes to business acquisition? Are you looking to kind of build a portfolio of these types of media businesses, or are you looking for will you be looking for something completely different in the future,
Yeah, I
or you
mean,
just want to focus on building this?
so we bought this into a holding company that we put our other smaller media business into. So we have a holding company that now owns these two.
Okay.
So the idea is that we would acquire businesses within that holding company. I think now that we've been 6 months into this, we realize that it would be incredibly difficult to hire what I would call a president or CEO of the business that we acquired, someone who truly has like an entrepreneurial approach, so
Mm-hmm.
that the notion of just buying a business and putting a true leader in there is probably much harder to execute than talk about. And so we would like to continue, we would like to hold this for a long time. That's part of our plan. Secondly, we do want to continue acquiring. We don't want to do what a lot of people do in this space is go horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's part of our differentiation in the marketplace is one of our competitors is part of a big horizontal operation. And that's sort of our competitive positioning against them is that we're committed to this industry. Um, but we're not sure how we'll approach that. It would probably require funding someone who's going to maybe needs the capital, who wants to run a business and is capable of running a business. And we can offer value where we can, where we have value, but we do want to acquire more rich.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll be exactly other B2B trade media businesses. We probably will look for things that relate to our current business, whether it be subscription data or things like that that are related to this industry to bolster what we do, or we'll build that within the
Mm-hmm.
business. But
Well, now you can buy those auto body repair or that auto repair shops you're looking at. See,
yeah,
there's a vertical integration.
oh, yeah,
No, well, that's awesome, Nate. I'm glad you were able to kind of jump on here. You guys have any questions for Nate before I let him go? Um,
I do have maybe a adjacent question. So you mentioned hiring a salesperson to kind of fill the seller's role, right? But somebody who's like in the industry, right? Um, so did you find somebody in the industry, right? Or like in this industry specifically, did they like bring their own kind of contacts, or was it just somebody who knew the lingo
yeah.
similar to like maybe what you know?
We hired someone who had media experience, but not experience in the collision industry. I mean, it's a niche, media and collision is too niche to find that needle in the haystack. So we knew we wanted someone with media experience, and um, I think he's doing a better job than the seller was doing, which is amazing given her long relationship with these people. So it turned out to be a really great hire.
Awesome.
so
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nick has his
Nick,
hand up.
Nick, you got a question?
Yeah, sorry to jump in late, so maybe I missed it. Looking at like the collision industry, more and more of these cars have just so many sensors and need calibration. Is that something you're looking into? Are companies being able to train their employees to get, say, Ford certified or Tesla certified to calibrate? and do these, or is it like, we just have to replace the whole bumper?
You
I'm
know,
just thinking about business opportunities there to stand out from your competitors.
I try to make myself sound smart, but in reality, I didn't have any idea about how great of an advantage this is going into it. What you said is there's a tremendous amount of technological change happening in this industry. It used to be you wrecked your car and you dented it, the body shop would, push out the dent and repaint it. And now what Nick's saying is you have all these cameras on your cars that have to be calibrated perfectly, that sense if you're moving a lane or whatnot. And so it becomes a really a technically challenging job. So everyone is having to be retrained. There's all new technology and software entrants in the industry, which means that there's a real need for content and information from the collision repair shop. So it's not like the tire industry where it's like, yeah, here's the tire magazine. What can you write about every single month? With this, there's constant evolution and change, and there's real need for information. And there's a lot of brands that need to advertise to reach these because of these new technologies. So maybe you were asking about the training aspect. We'll see how that goes. There's some really established training companies, but obviously training is a really lucrative and needed part of a lot of industries, and so it could be part of what we do in the future.
Yeah, sure.
Totally. Yeah, I think everyone's now trying to scrambling to stay relevant, and I'm sure they have employees they want to train up. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, okay, and I came in late on your content part. Cool. Thank you.
Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Nate, for sharing the story. It's
Sure.
inspiring to hear. Would you mind just saying again what you said about how you were able to negotiate the second note for working capital? I guess you didn't run into any SBA snags doing that, and I'd just be curious, kind of the positioning and just any more details you have there, because the previous deal I was working on that kind of fell through in diligence. Working capital it seems to be kind of an issue continually, and I've also heard from AEs that underfunded working capital. So I would like to ideally avoid that on the LOI I put together right now.
So we had three components of our working capital. Number one, the SBA deal had a portion of the deal that was working. I mean, to just use real terms, there was cash that would go into our bank account at close.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then as part of our LOI, there was an additional amount that was money we would receive from incoming accounts receivable, but it was a small amount at close. And
what percent was that approximately? Because I feel like most sellers obviously are fighting to keep 100% of that, but
yeah, it was I would say about, let me see, about 25 to 30% of accounts receivable. And so what we did was, after our whole calculation, we said, look, advertiser A, B, and C, they're going to require a lot of paperwork to change over. We think this is going to take this will not be business as usual for the first few months. So we can't use historics to say what and this was all at the help of our guy who helped us. And so that was the case we made. We said we have to be protected in the case that these advertisers drag out the transition, which in fact they did. But it was kind of bolstered by additional revenue and additional profit that we didn't necessarily plan for. So it was kind of mitigated, I should say, by that. So that was the third element of the working capital was, an additional portion of the accounts receivable, that instead of it just being given to us by the seller as it was in the LOI and the original deal structure, we applied a seller note against that amount. So that's how we structured it.
Okay. And at what point did you bring on your QOE consultant? Was that after the LOI? Like
immediately, yeah. And we had him ready and waiting. Once the LOI was signed, he had a flood of requests, and so he was ready to go immediately.
Yeah, you don't ever want to engage before you get the LOI, or it's wasting money. Hey, Alex, go ahead, jump on in.
Yeah, thanks, Nate, for this is really good information. Appreciate you speaking with us today. My question is, how long did you negotiate to have the seller remain on board? And in hindsight, would you have changed that number?
Great question.
3 months, 6 months?
you're so nervous about that because you're like, we need this person around. And so we had her basically full time for a month, and then I want to say 4 or 5 hours a week for another 5 months. And so that was all the whole month of August, which was very essential. And the big thing for us was we need her to help to introduce our new salesperson that we hire to the advertisers that are her accounts, because they were the biggest advertisers of the business. And once we got to, we closed on August 1st. Once we got to October and then into November, like there's not a lot for her to do. And now she's kind of needling and all these things we're doing, and we kind of need her to go. And so it got to the point where it is now where, and this is like, it's, this person, has had only this to do. And so she doesn't really know what to do with her day. And so she still likes to come to the office for a couple hours. That's not part of our deal, to kind of just futz around. And it's eventually we're going to have to say, you can't come anymore. But so we were very nervous about it, but we felt like we had things really under control in about, 3 months. But it was really about that transition, and it was just a timing thing with being able to hire someone and then do the transition. If it wasn't for that nuance, it probably would have been closer to 2 months that we, and then it started to become a bit of a liability because we were trying to evolve certain things, and staff members didn't always like having her around, and so there was a little bit of rub with that.
All right, cool. Yeah, those transitions can be tricky sometimes. I'm sure you kept an option in there to kind of end it early in your transition services agreement, I'm
Yeah, it
sure.
was really a benefit to us,
Yeah,
it's like, well, you have me if you need me. So
for sure. All right,
That's
well,
great. Did you, oh, sorry, Rich, I had one follow-up question. Did you actually also experience any unexpected attrition coming on board, or was
no,
that, oh, it's okay.
no. This was a tough thing. We were able to talk to 3 employees that we considered key a few days before closing. Like, it was basically our condition, and the seller was very apprehensive of that for obvious reasons. Because if we walked and they walked, she'd be in a tough position.
Yeah,
But we were able to do that, and that worked out good. So there wasn't any attrition.
that's good to hear. Thanks.
Yeah,
all right, well, Nate, well, thanks for joining us, man. I know
sure.
it's been a while since you and I have had a
Yeah,
conversation. So I'm glad that we connected, and I
likewise.
will stay in touch to get regular updates. And obviously, if you need my help with anything moving forward, feel free to reach out to me, and definitely
Same
help you as
here.
one of our alumni. um, but thanks for jumping on. And I'll get, for all of you guys who are interested in the QOE person, I'll kind of discuss that with Nate, and make sure he's okay sharing that with me. I'll actually want to contact his contact, just so I can so he understands who we are, what we're
Yeah.
about, before I start passing his information around. I don't
He's
want
an
to.
older guy. I don't, he might even be not working so much anymore, but we'll
Yeah.
find. But I'll check with him, and I'll
Yep.
connect you with him, Rich, and then we'll go
Yep.
from there.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for hopping on, everyone, and I will send you guys the connect. Hopefully, we'll get this uploaded pretty soon. I know we're behind with uploading some of the past ones, but hopefully, we'll get this uploaded for you guys, and you guys can have this permanent record of Nate's discussion with us. And again, Nate, thanks for jumping on, and I'll see the rest of you guys next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Later on, Rich. Hope
All
your
right.
son does well.
Thanks,
Yes.
man. Appreciate it.
Bye.